Have you ever been in a complete flow state? You know that time when ideas, inspiration, creativity is just coming through you. It's popping up from within. It feels like water coming through a pipe and it's just flowing. And other times, have you noticed how that pipe is just shut? Nothing comes to you. No good ideas of how to solve a task or how to create something new. Why is that? What is the difference between those kinds of states?
So, what Emil is saying right now, that sometimes inspiration, motivation, and everything just feels blocked. And the reason why we're talking about this is that I've been feeling that way in the last week. I've been struggling with this, and to be honest, I've never given it much thought of why that is. What is it that happens when the pipe is blocked? So that's something that we're looking to explore today.
That is right. And you're here listening to me, Emil, and the founder of Great.com, Eric Bergman. And together we're doing this Becoming Great podcast, where we explore how to grow as people and how to grow as an organization, Great.com. And if you want to hear about the doubt that Eric was feeling, go back and check out last week's episode, our update, A Period of Doubt. Today we're going to explore creativity, and we are going to explore 3 things that we feel are blocking creativity. And if those are removed, I think there's a much higher chance to have that water flowing through your creative pipe.
I just see it as a watery rainbow. I just felt like
a
rainbow water. Creativity looks like a rainbow. I wanted to say rainbow.
Unicorns riding on it, of course. And those 3 blocks are distraction, fear, and health.
Dum 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 dum.
Da, 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 da. And, well, guys, do you have someone around you that is just this creative genius? Because I have in my life. The most creative person... Oh no, it's not Eric. The most creative person that I know, his name is Johan. He's a music producer. Producer. He's a music producer. And the way he's being creative is that he is like doing random things like playing Mario Kart, hanging out with friends, smoking sandwiches, smoking stuff, just doing random things. And all of a sudden he just gets all of these new ideas. So when I'm looking at him and trying to be creative, it's not really helpful because he's so natural at being creative. What do you think is happening there, Eric?
I think that he is in some ways like the typical thing that we see creativity in movies and stuff, like this artist soul that it just comes to.
I'm thinking Californication, if you've seen that movie.
That's
a
TV show.
Yeah, TV show, yeah.
Ideas just coming from nowhere and...
doing nothing, and then a book comes.
Yeah, and I think that with that picture in mind, it's kind of hard to see what is creativity, how can I get to it, and how can you kind of... Do you have a high... You can say that you have a creativity. And to me, that's like something that you need to do to get there. And by just looking at a person like that, it feels like, yeah, but it's just supposed to come. Kind of like love and relationships just come to some people, or they're just naturally good at this or that. But I think that you have to work to get to creativity.
Well, at least us mortals, because I think like, having very high creativity or very, very good creativity, I think that's quite a rare skill. To have it to that magnitude that my friend has. Or someone like, I heard Elon Musk say that it never stops from him. Like never stops getting new ideas. And I think that's kind of rare. I think that's maybe 1 in 100 people.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think that means that us mortals can't be creative.
No, for sure. But at the same time, before we started planning this episode, have you ever thought about what's behind creativity or what could block it or what it is?
Do you mean what's behind it as in a personality trait? Or what do you
No,
mean by
like
the question?
what does creativity mean in terms of how to get creativity? Have you ever thought about what could block it or what this could be before? Or have you thought about it as something that's just there or it's not there?
Well, I can definitely see patterns in my own life, habits that I can get into that quite reliably put me in a state where that rainbow water is flowing.
Love the rainbow water.
That was a good metaphor. That was creative of you, Eric.
Yeah, I'm in flow state, Yeah, okay, so let's just jump into these three things you mentioned then.
Yeah.
So what it is that blocks it? And you started by saying distractions. What is it that you think about then?
Well, I know that I can get into the point where the rainbow water is flowing, but for me it kind of takes time. I need like 15 minutes, half an hour of pure focus on one thing to get into that flow state. And for me, just getting one text or just having the idea that, oh, I'm gonna go and do this other thing in my apartment, that gets me out of that flow state. And it takes about 20-30 minutes to get back in there. And if that distraction is happening that often, it means that I never get there.
This reminds me of something that I read about open plan offices. So, it's very popular these days that you just have an open plan office that looks really cool and everyone is sitting everywhere and doing these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And basically every study that I've read on open plan offices says that it is a horrible, shitty idea.
Yeah.
It makes you save some money on space and it gives you this cool vibe. But just because of what you're saying right now, distractions, and apparently especially for developers that sit and write code, that whenever someone comes knocking on their shoulder, it takes them 10-15 minutes to get back into whatever they were doing. And in an open plan, it's so easy to knock on your shoulder. And sometimes that's a good thing because you can ask something. But not if you're stealing 15 minutes of someone who is really in flow state.
Man, I was at a girl I was seeing before. I was at her office, and she was sitting on an open office next with two people on her side, and she was using headphones that were not voice reduction. So every time someone has a phone call in that office, she can hear them speak. And if she hears them speak, that means that she gets out of her train of thought and into theirs. Maybe some people are really good at shutting off. I am not one of those people. If someone is talking in the background, it's so much more difficult for me to get into a flow state.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, so what to do then? What to do to limit distractions?
Well, one thing that I think we have found out, we talked about this yesterday and kind of had a realization, is that we are naturally getting into a flow state when you and I are planning this podcast. And what do you think that is?
Yes, I like what we talked about there, and it kind of aligns to the struggles of being undistracted ourselves. That if I'm sitting and writing something for my own purpose and I'm struggling a little bit at that time, it's very easy to put up my phone and start playing with it or go grab a snack or whatever it is to create that kind of distraction for myself. But what we've seen when we're doing this together is that whenever I'm kind of losing focus a little bit, then you help me to get back on track because you haven't lost focus at that very second.
Yeah.
And it would be rude for me to start playing with my phone just because it beeps or whatever when I'm sitting talking to you. So we're kind of helping each other to stay on track, which is a bit of a paradox compared to the open office kind of thing then. That it's actually better to be two than to be one. And I've never thought about this before, but it goes for when you want to focus on a certain job task. But I can see the same thing going for when you need to really go through an idea or think about something. Because if I keep talking on one topic and then I'm passing the ball back to you and you're kind of on the same topic, we're going to stay on that topic. But if I'm trying to get somewhere with my thoughts, they are going to derail and go in another direction 100 times before I get to where it is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that is one gift that we get when I come visit you. You live in Malta, I live in Sweden. And we are just hanging out together. And we're talking about great. And a conversation in and of itself is helping to anchor the focus on one topic. And a conversation gets me into a flow state a lot of the time. And I think that is why. Focus on one thing.
Yeah. So at least for the two of us then, one of the key things of cooperating here is that we keep focus in a way we wouldn't do. And we're building on each other's ideas. So it's kind of, we're keeping distractions away, which is kind of what we're talking about here. But I can also see that we're building on each other's creativity and inspiration. So you are kind of sending your rainbow fireworks into my brain. They kind of explode in a way of love and creativity and inspiration, and it triggers a lot of things in my head. So for example, now I hadn't thought about talking about this office thing. It just made so much sense, and it was your kind of rainbow that went into my head and triggered that. So you can see it as it eliminated distractions in a way, but it also improves the strength of the rainbow.
I have really cool images in my mind right now.
Me too, I like rainbows.
So what could someone then do? Because I've noticed this when you and I hang out, that I'm often in flow state. And when I get back from Malta, I try to think, okay, now because I work from home, I'm in my office, how can I simulate that flow state, the things that your company is helping me with? So how would you do that? How would you simulate the conditions of being two when it's just you on your own?
Yeah, so that's tricky. I don't have a good answer to it, but I would put my phone away. I think that's key. Put
huge.
Distractions far away from you.
Yeah.
So flight mode on your phone. Usually when I need to do something that I feel, okay, I'm going to need to focus on this. I'm going to need to be creative. I'm writing something, I'm doing something. I usually put my phone away and I turn off Wi-Fi on my computer. That's like two key things. I make sure that I have water next to me, because one of my common excuses is to get up and go and get a glass of water. and that's just a common excuse. I'm not sure if I have any other ways of limiting those distractions. Well, I'm setting aside time. It's like, okay, I'm going to sit here now and I'm not going to do anything. I don't let myself do anything else than this task. So either I sit here, do nothing and just completely suck, and that's fine, or I stick to this task. And a lot of the time creativity comes after just sitting and listening to it or writing a little thing. And that becomes kind of my way to keep in the line that I'm going for.
So are you setting a timer then, that for 2 hours I will only do this thing? Or are you doing it until you're finished, kind of thing?
Neither or, I think. I don't really have a timer, and I don't do it until I'm done. I usually work in kind of 2 hour slots. Like, okay, for that long I have a lot of energy. And after 2 hours I'm usually drained of energy or tired or need something. So it's more like, okay, I'm not going to do any other task during this kind of session. And that's more about how much energy do I have than anything else.
So are you standing up and moving around at all during this time?
Yeah, a little bit. So I go to the bathroom. If I get stuck, when I feel that I'm not in flow state or coming up with ideas, I tend to walk around in a circle in my living room.
Yeah.
And so I get to that point, I walk a little bit and try to keep my thoughts on that. And that's usually happens when I feel a little bit stuck. Yeah. So when I feel this pipe isn't closed completely, but now it's just dripping.
Yeah.
And if I kind of walk through it, it will open up a little bit more.
I heard a public speech from a guy called Ben Greenfield. He's a health guy. And he said that whenever he's doing some work where he's in flow state, every 20 minutes he goes up and he's doing 10 burpees. Because that is putting out something called nitric oxide in your body, which is kind of like natural Viagra. You get more oxygen. And when your brain has more oxygen, you get more creative. And I haven't tried that much, but I do know that when I'm out walking or when I'm out running, I'm having much more creative thoughts. And I think that is because I have more oxygen in my brain.
Yeah, my friend Johan is doing the same thing. But he always works in 50-minute slots. And
50?
Then 50.
Yeah.
And then he does, I think he does 50 squats. So just
that's awesome.
Bending his knees.
Yeah.
And the logic with that is that the thighs are the biggest muscles in our body. So if you're gonna use one muscle to pump oxygen into your body, those are the best muscles to go to.
Yeah.
And he does that regularly. And I've been thinking that's such a smart thing, and I've been too lazy to try. So hey, if you're listening to this and you want to try something smart, try this. Let me know if it works, and I'm probably not going to try it. But I think it's a brilliant thing in theory.
Well, I've actually been trying it for a week now since I heard that podcast. This is a little bit of a sidetrack, but I think it's interesting. Because he was talking about these blue zones where people are living to be above 100. Yeah. And he said those guys are not really exercising much, but they are moving around all time naturally. So what he wants to do is to simulate that. So 2 times every hour, he's doing some kind of movement, like just 10 burpees or some squats. And the idea is that he wants exercise to be optional at the end of a day, because you actually moved around so much, and that you can do that even though you have a job where you're sitting still.
Yeah, I think that's really good.
Yeah,
I mean, I've heard that sitting down is the new smoking in terms of health. And
right.
If you can easily fix that by just moving around a little bit and not even getting exhausted doing so.
It seems like we're getting distracted from our distraction topic. All right, so what I was saying yet is that put your phone away. It's very important. That happens naturally when you're 2 people, and I think if you're 1, it's very good to simulate that. So and one thing as well, I think planning to be creative. Planning that for these 2 hours at this time, I will not be distracted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So put your phone away, put your computer in, turn off the Wi-Fi if you can, if you don't need internet to do the task you're doing. And if you are, log out from Facebook, log out from Skype, log out from Slack or whatever instant messaging thing you have.
Yeah.
And set time aside. That's the key 3 things.
Yeah. And I think a main reason for it is that it takes time to get into that flow state for us mortals. And every text, at least for me, is making me think of something else, and then I need like 5, 10, 15 minutes to get back in there. And if it happens all the time, constant distraction. All right, so let's go into number 2. Fear. Spooky.
I think this one is really interesting. It definitely blocks creativity for me, and I think it ties into the fear of failure. And I've heard something really smart about this, being that procrastination or putting things into the future is a self-defense mechanism. So by not trying, you cannot fail. So by not starting, you cannot fail. And you cannot humiliate yourself or whatever it is that you're afraid of. So not being inspired or not being creative in this way is a way of ourselves to protect ourselves from not even doing it. So even if that's let's say you're supposed to write an essay in school, and at your core, you're actually afraid that this is not going to be very good. One way of protecting ourselves from that feeling of doing something that's not good is to not do it at all. So it's less embarrassing to say, I didn't start or I didn't finish, than it is to say, I did it and I failed. So I think that's an interesting thing. And I can see, for me, it's a big block. Like this week, I've been feeling, okay, am I really the right person to do this project? Are we going to get to this grand visions that I'm talking about? Are this and this going to happen? And I can see then that it's easier for me to just shut off and not even try than it is to move forward through this resistance of, this feeling of how big it is.
Yeah, and then at least when that happens to me, what I do is that I do tasks that are easier and less scary to finish. So I make myself busy, but I don't do the important things that are more scary. I think even for me, doing a creative and difficult task, in the beginning of that, I often feel like I don't know how to do it. I feel incompetent. And it's not as pleasant feeling as doing something that I know how to do. So I kind of avoid feeling like that by not starting.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can see one of the questions I get most often is, okay, how would I start a company from people? And what I think is interesting with that one is that the people that I talk to most of the time have this grand vision of what a company is. And if you have a big vision of what a company is, it means that it's a big possibility that you're going to fail. It's a very overwhelming thing. And my most common reply to this is, how can you make this vision smaller? How can you create something where it wouldn't hurt to fail? So let's say instead of thinking, I need to quit my job, I need to invest money and then go all in, which there's a lot of risk here. And if you're failing, it's a big, important failure. But if you're instead saying, I'm going to start a business that I can do for an hour a day and I don't need money to invest. If you're failing here, you actually haven't put that much at risk. So the fear of failing isn't that big. You don't need to tell people about it. It's not going to be a public thing in the same way. So I think that's something that at least for me applies to any task. If I can take that risk of failing down and make it less scary, it's going to be easier for me to unblock the creativity.
This is quite different from what I hear many motivational speakers say. I often hear the advice from people like Tony Robbins and other big coaches that dream big. You want to see this grand vision. You want to visualize that you're there. And so you're saying that that could kind of be counterproductive in a way.
Yeah, I think so. I think if you manage to get started, dream big can be a valuable thing. And sometimes that might be the best cause. But I think the main reason why we fail at reaching our dreams is that we don't try. And I think a very big reason for that is that it's too scary. It's too big. I'm never going to be able to build a Tesla, but I might be able to build some little electrician car. So by taking the goals down, I think it's so much more likely that we try. And if we try, we might succeed. If we don't try, we're never going to succeed.
Do you think both is needed? Because I sometimes, when I'm in flow state, when I'm in a really, really, really good mood, like I'm Freddie Mercury out in the forest here in Stockholm. And at that time...
I love that your good mood guy is someone who kind of committed suicide.
He had a good time before doing it. And when he had that good time, I bet that... And I felt like those big dreams are possible. And seeing that vision is actually making me very inspired. And it is making me do things. And then other days, I'm waking up and I'm kind of in the opposite of that state. There's no rainbow water. It's just like some brown little thing coming out. There's a spider in my pipe. And when that is happening, that big dream seem impossible. And then that is actually blocking me. So at that time, a smaller image that is more doable would help me much more.
Yeah, I think it's individual based. I can see myself dreaming about the really big thing, and I need to chop it down in smaller tasks and be good at that for it to not scare me. And I think that a small task is something that always gets you going. So I think it matters a little bit where you are in your life. If most people that ask me questions are just coming out of school, and I think then the key thing is just to get started. But there's also people asking me who's been at the same job for 10 years and not liking it. It's like the paralyzing thing is to get started. So personally, I think it's much, much more important to start with a smaller dream and be there. And then sure, you can play away with inspiration. But I think that most people get more scared of the big picture than they would otherwise and get paralyzed. But that's just my experience.
Isn't it a good thing to do scary things though? Because when you do that scary thing, you're kind of strengthening the willpower muscle to do things even though they are scary. So if the only focus is to reduce the scariness, wouldn't you kind of lose out on doing scary things?
If you do the scary things, it's good that they're scary.
Yeah.
If you get paralyzed by the fear, it's not good. So I think that if you're going to start a company and you haven't done that before, you're going to start a business idea, that's always going to be scary. So if you take the fear down to a level where you can easily deal with it, I think that's a good way of doing it. It's still going to be scary, and I think it's very beneficial to challenge the fear. But it's important that it's not super scary.
Got it. So to summarize, fear is stopping creativity. And so there should be some fear, right? But not paralyzing.
Yeah, I would summarize it like this. So fear is a big thing. So if you're feeling stuck, ask yourself, what am I scared of? And how can I limit that fear? Which potentially could be not tell as many people about what you're doing. It could be a way of limiting your fear. Make it a smaller task. I only need to get to this point. Might be a way of dealing with the fear. Writing down what is actually the effects of me failing right now. And probably it's not as scary as you think it is. So to look at this fear and ask yourself, is this really real or not? Or am I just imagining this fear?
One final thing on fear. What if you're someone that is choosing tasks where you never feel scared? How do you think that affects creativity?
Well, if you never feel scared, I don't think you feel much creativity, to be honest. I think those go together. You need to challenge yourself to get to the rainbow.
Yeah.
I think it's a part of it.
So it's kind of like going to the gym. You don't want so many weights that you can't lift the bar, but you don't want it to be too easy either.
Yeah. I'm thinking if you're never doing something that the only time that you're doing that you don't risk of failing is when you're doing things you've already done. So if you're going to the gym and you're doing 10 push-ups each time, you know that you're going to make 10 push-ups. So there is no fear of failing doing 10 push-ups. But there is also very boring to do the same repetitive task and not challenging yourself. Yeah. So I guess as soon as it's a risk of failing, I think there is a certain element of fear.
All right, we're at the gym now. And I think this is a good time to segue into the third part of creativity, which is health.
Yeah.
So which part of health would you say for you is the most important for creativity?
So I think this part of the podcast is quite apparent what we're going to say. So I'd just touch upon these things and we'll see if there is something we'd like to highlight more. So I think a key thing is to sleep well. So if you're feeling stuck in creativity, one good question is, how much have I slept? And by much, I'm not saying 5 hours, I'm saying 8. I think exercise is key. Like, have I been working out lately or am I just sitting here? What have I eaten? How much have I actually cared about these things? And for me, these are the 3 key things about being able to stay focused and being creative. And if I mess up on these 3, the rainbow is going to be smaller and smaller and might just be dripping.
I want to add one thing you said on sleep, because I think especially dream sleep, REM sleep, which is happening in the later part of the night, that is our brain actually focusing on being creative. A lot of inventions have come from people dreaming about them. The guy who made up the periodic system, for example, he dreamed about it, got the whole thing, and then just pieced it down the next morning, and it was complete. All the elements.
The periodic systems is this physics thing with
all the elements of the universe.
All the elements.
The guy had worked on it for 2 years, didn't have a clue. Then he dreamt about it and got the whole thing in one piece.
And so similar then to waking up and feeling, oh, I should write this down. I got this brilliant idea, and then I never do, and I forget it by the next morning. So
what is happening when you're in dream sleep is that your brain is looking for connections that are unrelated. So it wants to think about things that are as unrelated as possible.
Which is kind of an example here.
Okay, so it might be thinking about how take 2 very unrelated things in your life. So it's just trying things like, how is your morning shake comparing to your dancing?
Okay.
It's just trying many different things and at rapid rate. So your brain is more active when you're in dream sleep than when you're awake, and it's just trying, as it's looking for connection that are as different as possible, and it sees if they could be connected.
Could you say that the brain is kind of going bonkers and just connecting my hometown with the periodic system?
Yes,
and
exactly.
Then
like
the
that.
brain realized, okay, this doesn't make sense, so instantly try something else and try something else.
Exactly, and it's thinking about things that you would never think of when you're awake because it's so random.
Why is the brain doing this?
Well, creativity is one thing. It's doing it to. It's doing it for one thing that happens if you don't get dream sleep is that you don't understand social cues as well. So
Okay, so the brain is doing this to practice how people interact with each other.
it's practicing social things and it's practicing creative tasks. So it's looking for new solutions to problems that you have in your life. I'm sure there's more reasons.
Looking for new solutions might make sense. Okay,
Yeah.
so the brain is looking for ways to improve your everyday life, and that could happen by taking two things together.
Yeah.
So basically, they say that all inventions are actually just two old inventions crossed together, one way or another.
Exactly.
Like a wheelchair is just a wheel, and someone took a chair and they put them together.
Exactly.
And everything in fashion is just taking one thing and then take something away or add something.
Yeah.
And it's just the same thing. So that's kind of what the brain is doing then.
That is kind of what the brain is doing. And it wouldn't be surprising to me then when you're awake and from inside of you comes this insight like, oh yeah, I can do my business idea this way. And it wouldn't be surprising if that connection was actually made during dream sleep. Because you put two pieces together and now it's kind of just bubbling up into your conscious when you're awake.
Okay. How do you know about this?
I just read a very interesting book called Why We Sleep about a guy, his name is Matthew Walker. So I really recommend that book on sleep. We're going to do a whole episode on sleep in the future. And if you want to learn more about it now, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. So search for Joe Rogan and Matthew Walker.
Okay, that's
and
cool.
One thing I want to add on dream sleep then, it's very important for creativity. And in his book, he says that 99% of people actually need 8 hours of sleep. And if you're someone that only sleeps 6 hours, maybe you go up early to go up to work and do a creative task. It seems like you're getting 75% of the sleep that you're needing, but almost all dream sleep happens in the last 4 hours of the night. In the first 4 hours of the night, you are in deep sleep, which is restorative to your body, etc. So if you get 2 hours less in the end of the night, that means that you're losing half of your dream sleep.
Okay, so to sum this up a little bit, sleep is important.
Yes.
Dream sleep, which is the last part of your sleep, is the most important.
And you dream
for
sleep
creativity.
more and more towards the end of the night. So the last 2 hours is almost all dream sleep.
So then you could argue that if you're going to wake up early, it's very important that you go to bed early so you still get that part of your sleep if you need to be creative.
Yes.
You cannot shove that part away.
Yeah, so going up 2 hours earlier to do a creative task is a pretty shitty trade because your brain is being super creative when you're sleeping.
Okay. So should we sum this entire episode up because we're running short on time? We want to touch upon some more brilliant stuff.
Well, one more health thing that I'm really into, I know you're not into it, and that is meditation. And I've been practicing this for 6-7 years myself. I know many people have talked about meditation. But for this specific topic, I want to mention it because meditation for me is basically just the art of not being distracted. You're practicing being undistracted. And since the first thing we touched upon in this episode is it's important for creativity to not be distracted. I think practicing that skill just for 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day will really help, at least me, getting into flow state. And if you're new to meditation, I recommend checking out an app that is called
Headspace.
Headspace. Yes, that's a really good app for beginners. So check it out. For me, it works great.
Yeah, one teeny tiny thing on that then. So when I'm meditating, quotation marks, I'm usually just sitting and thinking. And it ties into fear then that creativity can come in that state because when I'm in front of my computer, whatever idea I get, I need to actually write down and it becomes more real. So I think that's get more challenged by fear. But if I'm just sitting there just being, I don't need to take the idea so seriously. So I think that I'm kind of unblocking fear in a sense. So by not being in front of the computer, by not saying I need to get here now, it might actually unlock these kind of things. And I can feel that I get a lot of ideas when I'm in that state.
Final question. When are you the most creative?
Yeah, but when When I'm with you, to be honest. So when we are together and you are my muse and I want to create rainbows and unicorns with you. So when we're two people focus on one task that I enjoy, that's the most important thing. And I'm not going to ask you because we're running too short on time.
I want to say, come on.
Okay, you can say.
I get easily 20% more creative when I'm moving. So when I'm on a treadmill, when I'm out walking, that really works for me.
Could it be the same thing there? There's less fear. So
Yeah,
you're both getting
for
more
sure.
oxygen into your brain, but you're also not taking your ideas so serious as you need to do in front of the computer.
Yeah, I'm not evaluating myself. I'm just playing in my head. And I'm also thinking in images when I'm running. I think
Okay,
that helps.
that's good.
All right. We are done for today. So
boom.
if you have any questions for us, if you have any idea for an episode topic, or if you have something you think we did well or something we did bad, please send us an email to podcast@great.com, and we see you next week.
Rainbows and unicorns.
It's the best. Bye bye.